Joining me this morning for this panel is number one, Mary Baker, who is the CEO of Baker Tax and Accounting Services, LLC. Richard Botwright, who is the co-chair of State and Local Tax Group at Stevens and Lee. And Michael Kovacs, the Taxpayer Service Representative at New Jersey Division of Taxation, Taxation University. Somebody else from Treasury will continue that theme of how important Treasury is and how great they are to work with. So thank you, Mary, thank you, Rich, and thank you, Mike. To get started, wanted to start with Mike from Treasury and ask the tax issues that you regularly see small businesses struggle with. Maybe they're not on their radar. What do small businesses have to worry about that sometimes they miss, and are there things that we can do to help them start out?
Hello, can everybody hear me? Good morning. Well, what you said, not on their radar, that is the most glaring problem I see with small businesses, and it's really not the business owner's problems. It's a problem with our administration of certain taxes and getting the information out is we find most, and most by most, I mean nearly all, non-compliance comes not from willful non-compliance, but just from not knowing what their responsibilities are. So there's not one specific tax issue that I see from small business owners regarding one specific tax, but what I do see is just a lack of, the question I always get is not, well, I didn't want to do that. It's, I didn't know I had to do that. It's not knowing what their responsibilities are. They file a piece of paperwork, or they go to somebody, maybe an accountant, an attorney, they file some registration, they may even register as an entity, and they're not even informed of this. They're not informed they have to file annual reports. They're not informed they now have a sales tax eligibility. They're not informed that that now has to be filed quarterly every year. So it's just a lack of, I think, communication and getting the word out on what the actual responsibilities for a small business are. And of course, they vary depending on the type of entity. Most of them don't realize that unless they're a C corporation, they're going to be reporting their income basically on their personal tax return. There may be other requirements, such as a partnership may have to submit filing fees with the NJ 1065, but they're still going to be reporting and taxed on their income on their personal tax return. So there isn't, again, one issue. It's just, I think, a lack of clarity and coordination and communication. We offer programs, which I'm going to talk about later, to help educate the taxpayers. I've brought with me, I didn't think I would have enough, now I believe I obviously do, a great handout that we give out at our SBWs, our small business workshops, that goes through everything from registration, the pros and cons of each entity type, what they're required to file, when they're required to file it, how to end a business, how to dissolve a business, how to reinstate a business. It goes into some common sales tax scenarios, things like that. So I will make these available to you obviously after. I will leave them up here or I'll bring them to you, but definitely take one of these packets and my contact information. And again, I'll talk about that later when I get into what we do with the small business workshops, but I think it's just, a lot of people are afraid to reach out to the division and say, look, I registered a business, I don't know what to do, because they think it's going to get us on our radar or something like that. We are trying to be the small business owner's best friend. I know how that sounds with state government, but everybody in that building is on the side of the taxpayers. Believe me, from the management down, we want to help you. So please reach out to us. If you have clients that need help, have them reach out to us. It's just communication, I think, is the biggest issue.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
One of the taxes that I think hasn't come up yet today and is the second largest tax our state collects is the sales tax. And I know, talking to BIA members, talking to Mary before, it's something that she's often encountered clients that aren't too sure about. It's one of those taxes that might slip under the radar and have lots of questions about and do something unintentional that could get them in trouble. So wanted to turn it to Mary to talk a little bit about small business obligations with sales taxes and what they have to worry about.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So let's talk about sales tax and what is the obligation for small business owners. Number one thing, sales taxes is not your money. It belongs to the state. I encounter a lot of small business owners, and one of their issues is that they will collect sales tax, right? And use that money for expenses for their business. Sales tax belong to the state. When you collect sales tax, you should be depositing that money into a separate account and pay it on a monthly or quarterly basis, depending on your business income. I cannot stress how important that is. The state, I love the state of New Jersey, is a stickler on that, but they will enforce sales tax. We need sales tax, right, just to keep our state going and for our state to run. If you ever have a problem paying your sales taxes or cannot pay your sales tax, please reach out to the state. The state will assist you. They do have agents that work with you, but if you ignore them, that's when the problem starts, right? The state, I have seen some situations where business owners that did not know they were supposed to collect sales tax, they never collected the sales tax from the customers, and in that case, when the states come, they're responsible to pay those sales tax, even though they did not collect it from the customer. So you want to make sure, out of all the taxes, of course the federal taxes, but the state of New Jersey, you want to collect it. If you are a restaurant, I cannot stress this enough. If you are a restaurant, make sure you submit your sales tax on a timely basis. Okay?
Can I jump in something there? Something very important I think a lot of business owners don't do is, it comes time to file tax. Could be sales tax. Sales tax is the most common. And they don't file because they can't pay. They don't have the money. That is a big mistake. If you don't file, you can file now sales tax on our website without making a payment. We prefer you make a payment, but you can file without making a payment. If you don't file because you can't pay, we can't help you. We need some kind of estimated tax liability. Once you file, let us know, here's what I owe, but I can't pay it. Then we can assign you to somebody in our deferred payment section. We can get you on a payment plan, things like that. But it's the putting the head in the ground like an ostrich and I can't pay, I'm not going to file. That is when the collection and enforcement action can really ramp up, which Mary was referring to. So please, even if you cannot pay, at least file, because that gets you on the radar and that lets us then take more measures to better help you out. Whereas if you don't file at all, there's really nothing we can do but say, well, you have to file. You have to file first. So please don't ever not file because you can't pay either any or all of it. Our system now allows it to be filed without a payment.
Yeah. And I guess to follow up on what Mike said, we often find business owners, small business owners in particular, might find themselves in a situation where they haven't filed sales taxes and you're 10 or 15 years into the business and then all of a sudden you're like, well, what happens to all of the tax? Guess what? You owe it all because you did not file the return, as Mike was talking about. So file the return so that you're at least limiting your potential exposure. So if there's an audit at some point, they're not going to go back to the beginning of time.
Right, but another thing with Mike, when you say sales tax, when you collect sales tax, it's not a such thing as you cannot pay, because if you're collecting that money from your customers, you should not be spending that money. That's money that you already have, that you should have placed aside in a separate account, and you should just go ahead and pay it, right? Even if it's monthly or quarterly. To say I cannot pay sales tax if you collect it, it's not your money, you need to pay it. That's so important, right? So you want to make sure that when you collect it, you pay it. If you feel that you're going to spend it, right, before the quarter is there, pay it immediately. Pay it on a monthly basis, right? The state doesn't mind accepting money early. Just pay it. So that way you know you're not going to spend the money that doesn't belong to you.
No, thank you very much. And shifting a little bit from sales tax and the state resources, Rich, wanted to ask you, talked about businesses opening up, but talk about businesses kind of moving through their lifestyle. Sales tax is kind of an ongoing thing, but what are the tax issues that you see that a small business, from when they open to kind of midlife cycle to when they're succeeding, selling, closing, what are those small business tax issues that should be focused on?
Yeah. So I'm with Stevens and Lee. And Stevens and Lee, we have offices throughout the country. And we're a full-service law firm, so I have the benefit of not seeing only the tax side, but also seeing some of the other legal implications that small businesses face. But as you go through the life cycle of the business, there are a lot of things that you need to consider from a tax perspective. For example, when you start the business, are you going to start the business from scratch? Or are you going to buy a business? Well, if you're going to buy a business, you probably should at least talk to a lawyer. One of the things
We know some good ones here.
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen a lot is sometimes we call it buying someone else's tax liabilities. If I go in and I buy a company and there's some existing liabilities there, guess what? You're on the hook for it. So as you go through the life cycle, that's one of the things you need to consider. If you're going to start your own business, then okay, what kind of business form do I want? Do I want to be a corporation? Do I want to be a partnership? Do I want to be a limited liability company? Do I want to be an S corp? We'll talk about ESOP in a few minutes, but it's all those considerations. And one of the things we find normally as you start to move through is as you start the business, you have a requirement, as Mary said, to not only collect and pay tax, but to keep records. So you need to kind of get a system in place so that you can keep records so that you can validate what you owe and what you've paid. Those are usually what we find in the general formation. Then as the business starts moving, then small businesses encounter a whole bunch more of issues. For example, Mary's talking about sales tax. One thing not a lot of people realize is there are over 10,000 local jurisdictions throughout the country. So if you're selling products throughout the country, you might have a liability in another state, another locality, and it's just something that's usually not on a small business's radar until they start getting bigger, until they're into the growth section. And one of the things that Mary also talked about is when you actually collect sales tax from someone, it's not your money. It's called a trust fund tax because you're holding it in trust for the state. Well, if you collect the money, you're on the hook for it. And it doesn't matter if it's 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, or 20 years down the road. The small businesses need to do what they can to kind of rectify that. Now, in the growth stage, some businesses realize that they have an issue and they reach out to the state on a voluntary basis and say, hey, Michael, I think we should have been filing, but we weren't. How can we rectify that? And we can kind of limit the look back. So that's as the business is kind of in its growth spurt. And then what the real entrepreneurs like is when you get to the end, and it's sell the business, exit the business, however you want to call it. But there's where a tax lawyer is your best friend, because the tax lawyer will help you, I don't want to say minimize the tax, but calculate the correct tax. You don't want to overpay the tax. You should think about ways to structure the transaction from a business perspective, so that you limit your liability going forward, and so you don't have existing tax exposures. Gain on the sale of business assets is something we see all the time. Business assets, are you selling the business entity? Sale of stock, sale of business interest. So those are all the things that we see small businesses deal with on a daily basis.
Thank you, Rich. Mary, you have anything to add on some of the points Rich brought up about what businesses are seeing through that life cycle that you've seen with your accounting clients?
I see in the beginning stage, it is sometime if you're not educated in the beginning stage, you don't know. what you should be paying, what you should be collecting, and how to pay it. I always recommend that you do search out an expert or someone that knows this, or even the state agency, right, or the federal agency. They do have agents that are here to assist you, right, in any stage of your business. If you don't know, they understand that, right? And if I do find sometimes you can negotiate with them, right? Sometime to eliminate some of these extra fees, these penalties and interests, right? But if you need to reach out to them, do not avoid them. They will eliminate, they will assist you, they will put you on payment plans. They will have you go on some type of installment plan, because their goal is to keep you in business, right? We know as businesses in the community, we are the community. We help build the community, the employment. So if they can assist us, it helps our state and our community as well. So you want to just make sure each stage of your business, do not be afraid to ask. There is a lot of resources, free resources out here in the state of New Jersey, just to assist you as a small business owner. Do not be afraid to ask, because it's your business. You're in business, right, to make a profit. And we want to make sure that you do make a profit and stay in business.
Excellent. Profit's good.
Thank you.
Towards that, you brought up resources. Recurring theme of this morning is some of the positive things that Treasury Department's doing. Mike, can you talk a little more about the Taxation University, some of the other resources that you offer to the small business community that Mary referenced?
Sure. I think one of the best programs we have is we do small business workshops throughout the state, and we do them all year. Our unit is a small unit. The name of our unit now is Taxation University. It's about 7 or 8 of us, but it's all very seasoned employees. And what we do is, if you go on our website, if you get the contact information from the handout, there is a current schedule on our website for already scheduled small business workshops. So if one is in your area, absolutely attend. Or if you don't see one in your area, if you can gather around 6 or 7 people, small business owners, you can reach out to us. You can email us, and we will specifically design a small business workshop just for you. We will come to where you are. We usually partner with local libraries, and our small business workshops cover everything. The most popular is we have one for registration. We go through all the registrations for each entity type, each individual structure, what their responsibilities are, whether they have to do annual reports. Then we go into how to report that business income. And the one surprising thing, like I kind of mentioned earlier, is people are surprised that most businesses are reporting it on their personal return. It's really only the C corporations that are getting taxed at the corporate level. S corps have to pay minimum tax and things like that, but majority of the tax is being funneled through, passed through entities to the actual personal tax return. So we go through whatever entity type you are. These are the forms you have to file every year, your personal tax return, whether there's anything else, annual report. These are the due dates. These are the phone numbers if you need help with those, and it's all free. And then we do a sales tax workshop, and that can be about a 3-hour one. And that covers everything, how to register for sales tax. We go through what's taxable, what's not. We go into certain industries, restaurants, hotels, things like that. We talk about exemption certificates. So it is an excellent, excellent resource. And of course, these small business workshops are free. So again, go on our website. It's nj.gov/taxation. There is, like I said, an existing schedule for already scheduled workshops around the state. If one's not in the area or you want something tailored to you and your group, reach out to us, submit a speaker request form, and we will come to you and we will talk about anything you want, New Jersey tax related. We will help you out. The presentation, of course, is aimed at a mass audience, but afterwards, we always stick around. We always get specific questions. I have this, I have a client this. Here's my phone number. I'll be in the office tomorrow, or somebody else is in the office right now. Give us a call. We'll straighten it out. So again, all about communication, and small business workshops are a really, really, really vital tool for reaching the small business community.
No, thank you. I encourage everyone online, everyone here, Treasury, small business workshops, Mike's resources are great use. And also, shout out to the Business Action Center, another fantastic resource for our small businesses in the state. And Don Newman's here this morning, and great resource. And Don, I know, works with Treasury and these Taxation University folks to be as to make state government as business friendly as possible, and we really appreciate that and try to promote that when we can. Something else that state government recently did to help businesses, especially small businesses, Aaron referenced it on the earlier panel, is the PT-BAIT, the pass-through business alternative income tax. If we remember a couple years ago, and it's still an issue now for residents, is the businesses and taxpayers in general in New Jersey were upset about the state and local tax limitation, SALT. Became a term that no one knew before the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act, but federal government decided to limit our SALT deductions, and that's obviously in a high tax state like New Jersey, that's going to impact a lot of folks. The state came up with, on a bipartisan basis, and Governor Murphy signed it, a bill to help small businesses deal with those SALT limitations, the PT-BAIT law. And so this allows pass-through businesses that paid through their income tax, and corporate taxpayers have these deductions. Not everybody does, and so the PT-BAIT law is a new one, and it's been successful, as Aaron said. Wanted to see if anybody, whether starting with Rich from your tax attorney side, Mike and Mary, anybody want to talk about PT-BAIT?
Yeah. Has anyone heard about the New Jersey BAIT? You guys familiar with the BAIT? I see a lot of people kind of with their hands up. It's a really neat acronym. It stands for New Jersey BAIT Business
Alternative income tax.
Thank you. Nervous. It's the BAIT, and just to kind of follow up on what Chris was saying is it has a really interesting background. In, let's say, 2019, they changed the law. When I say the federal government changed the law, everybody files a federal income tax return, correct? Here in this room?
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, on your federal tax return, you get to deduct state and local taxes. Well, beginning in 2019, that was limited to $10,000. Now, what happens for a small business is small business are usually operated as pass-through entities. So when we say pass-through entities, all the income flows up through the entity to the owners of the business. So then the owners pay tax on the business earnings. When the federal government put the limit on the state and local tax deduction, basically what they did was increase the small business owners' tax. We've talked about New Jersey tax policy today. One of the very positive things New Jersey has done is to try to get around that limitation and to help the small businesses. So our program today is called taxing your bottom line. This is New Jersey trying to reduce the amount that you have to pay tax on. And basically the way the BAIT works is it's an election that the entity itself makes, and when the entity makes the election, the entity is subject to the tax. It withholds the tax, and then the owner gets a credit. So what New Jersey did is it kind of worked its way around the federal SALT limitation, and it reduced small business owners' overall tax liability. Now, there are other states, not New Jersey, that aren't quite as friendly, that haven't done this, or that don't recognize the BAIT. So if you file returns in other states, you need to look at those other states. For example, Pennsylvania does not give you a credit for BAIT payments. So if it's a pass-through entity, anything made by the pass-through entity, you don't get a credit for Pennsylvania purposes. And the only thing I probably should have said in the beginning is when I say pass-through entity, I generally mean something that's treated as a partnership for federal tax purposes or an S corporation. It does not include if you're operating as a sole proprietor and you own 100% of your LLC.
No, thank you. And on PT-BAIT, if any small businesses, if they're not filing that way, I would encourage you to talk to a tax attorney and accountant to find out more about it. Also, be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Ralph Thomas CPA Society that were leaders in New Jersey moving towards the PT bait and seeing the advantageous side of it, moving and reforming taxes this way. So thank you, Ralph. Thank you to the CPA Society.
Yeah, bait was really a clever workaround and ingenious by the legislature and our administration to work around the federal salt cap, and it's proven to be very successful for both business owners and the state, as it's been bringing in revenue, and business owners are complying. And like I said, we can come and talk to you about bait as well, from making the election process to the filing requirements to when payments need to be remitted to how it actually is administrated, because recent laws have made changes in the flow of the bait income. It can now be spread not just to the subsidiaries below the main entity that made the election. They now have a choice as to what they do with the bait payments. So again, yes, if you'd like to hear about bait, we can talk about that for 2 hours. Absolutely.
No, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Rich. Did want to ask about another tax that doesn't get attention and something that's been a little more in the news because of the unemployment insurance issues that we've been having, but payroll taxes. Mary, Rich, Mike, I wanted to see sort of how you advise your clients on payroll taxes. One of the more, featured payroll taxes is paying into the UI fund, which is the right thing to do. Businesses pay in, and the fund grows. And then in bad times, and obviously we saw a historic drain on the fund during the pandemic, then the fund goes down, and sometimes it leads to a automatic tax hike, which we're seeing right now. And we're in the middle of a 3-year phase-in of $1 billion tax increase on our payroll taxes. And there's been some talk about some small business relief on this, and we've been working with the legislature on that. But just on payroll taxes in general, and then on maybe the impact you might have seen for clients, Mary or Rich, on UI taxes. Can you talk about payroll taxes, advising clients on payroll taxes, and what to focus on?
I can. So this is what I see. I see a lot of this with payroll taxes. Because we are business owners, we feel that this is an additional expense, expensive expense. And so this is more of a warning as opposed to anything. A lot of business owners, in what they do, they try to avoid paying this payroll taxes, right? So they will have people that worked for them, they will give them a 1099 as opposed to being an employee. Keep in mind that if anyone is working for you and you are directing them to do the work on a daily basis, and you're controlling the work that they do, they are considered an employee. So if they are an employee, you need to pay payroll taxes, you need to put them on payroll. I see this pretty much all the time, every week. You will have someone work for you and then you let them go, right? For whatever reason, or they quit. The first thing that person does is file for unemployment, right? And when they go and file for unemployment and you have not paid any payroll taxes, it's opening up a whole can of worms for you with the state. Now you are going to have to prove that that person was a contractor as opposed to an employee. That's a hard thing to prove with the state, right? Because if you're directing this person, controlling their work activity for your company, they're considered an employee. And when you do that, now you're going to have to pay more payroll taxes, penalties, and interest, which is more than what you would have paid if you would have normally just put them on W-2s. So my recommendation is that if you do have staff, I'll call them staff, make sure they are 1099s or if they are employees. If they are someone that has a 1099, my suggestion is that, and this is just my own personal suggestion, is that you either have that person get an EIN number, right? So that would make them officially a business. It could be an LLC, it could be in their name, it doesn't matter. They have their EIN number. You're paying them under this EIN number. So if the state ever comes back to you or that person say, hey, I work, I want to apply for unemployment, you say, no, this is proof that the person is a company and I was paying a company and not an employee. Payroll taxes, we try to avoid them, but sometimes when we avoid them, we don't avoid them in the right way, and it costs you more when you get penalized from the state of New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Rich?
My colleague often has a way of just summarizing things in a word or two. And if anybody knows who my colleague is, Mr. Shipley, who was on the previous panel, he basically said, hire a payroll company. And he's right, because it's just so difficult, especially when you're starting a business to do those things. And as Mary said, we see issues all the time of employees versus independent contractors. And generally, the advice we give small businesses is everyone's an employee. Unless it's a special circumstances, like it's an attorney or something like that. Generally, anyone you employ, as Mary said, if you're controlling them, they're an employee. And that way you get around that issue.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
To back them up, yeah, we like to say that if you have a worker, give them the dignity of being an employee. If you're telling them what to do, if you're telling them when to show up, if you're giving them the tools to do their job, they are your employee. Give them the dignity of that. Have them covered with New Jersey tax withholding so they can meet their tax liability come tax time. Unemployment insurance, disability insurance, that part is handled by the Department of Labor, but it all comes together when they file their NJ 927. But that's very relevant. What Mary and Rich were talking about is far too many people are treating people as subcontractors, giving them 1099s when they really should be employees. And as Rich said, hire a payroll company. If you can afford it, absolutely. It will make everyone's life much, much easier.
Now, NBIA has some good members that are payroll companies, and Prime Point has been a sponsor of ours in the past, and would encourage you guys to reach out to those if possible. I wanted to turn it over. We're running out of time on this panel and the event this morning, but wanted to see if there's any questions from the audience. Yes.
Wait for the microphone.
Thank you.
I don't speak loud enough, they say. So I run a payroll company. We're members also. We're not Prime Point, but I would just caution you that when you hire a payroll company, first of all, if you have a small business, you should hire a payroll. What you said is accurate. Actually, you didn't say enough. It's much more complex than what you mentioned. So as a payroll company, I don't even like people asking me that question. I send them to their attorney and their accountant, because identifying who are employees is a complex, difficult thing. You need to talk to your accountant and your attorney. Don't try to get it for free from a payroll company, because we're not your accountant and attorney, and there's more to it than you may think. And what you said is true. If you hire someone like this, you might not be trying to avoid paying taxes, but they certainly are, because they're not paying their back end of the taxes they're supposed to pay. And that's where the problem comes in. It's not just unemployment, but they get hurt with workers' comp. Anything they do, if they call the government, they're going to call your company and do an employment audit on all of your records, not just this one person. They're going to audit your time records. Let me see the time you have for everybody. Your overtime records. It opens up the door for an audit, which is not pleasant. So as a payroll company, I'd say you should be using a payroll company. Whoever you choose, and there's different reasons for using different companies, and I would say pick one of those, but really your accountant and your attorney need to help you with this. There's a 20-question test, even that's not good enough. You need help with this. That's my question and comment.
Thank you.
And I guess just to support you, everything with a small business is a lot harder than we say. We sit up here and we say things are black and white, and nothing is ever black and white. Everything is always more difficult than it seems, and you're 100% right. We generally advise people to reach out to the experts and don't make these decisions yourself.
We're part of the team.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you. And I know we've gotten into labor law instead of tax law, but it's an important issue, and I know BIA has been consistently supporting the good reforms on misclassification, but also want to make sure we maintain the flexibility. There's a lot of people that don't want to be an employee, want to be a consultant, want that gig economy to flourish the way it should be, but follow the rules and do it the right way. So we want to make sure there's legislation doesn't go too far, but legislation is really just focusing on stopping misclassification. That makes sense.
Chris, we have one.
Yep.
On the sales tax end, how do you handle customers that downright refuse to pay the sales tax? We charge it, and they won't pay it. Who's on the hook for that? Us as the vendor, or the customer? And how do you report those customers who refuse on significantly sized invoices?
I'll take that. That is something I've never heard of, people refusing to pay. Really? You can absolutely report tax cheats to the Division of Taxation, and we will take enforcement action. So absolutely. I know you're in business to do business, and it probably would hurt more than it would help, but I would refuse the sale. If somebody is refusing to pay. The sale already happened, okay.
Is there a position they're taking, or they just don't want to pay it?
They just don't pay it. They either say, you quoted me, and they totally say, well, you didn't quote me for sales tax, which is great, or they just flat out refuse to pay it.
They've been reported, nothing's ever happened.
And then when we get audited, the state auditors turn around and say it was taxable income, and therefore you must remit.
So actually, the question really is, what happens if the customer doesn't pay sales tax? You charge it to them, but they don't pay it, right? Is that what you're saying? We actually had a small business that we represented recently that they did it a little bit differently. Rather than say they were charging the sales tax, they just said everything is included. And the problem then, the state said, well, you know what? You collected the money. Part of that was our sales tax. It doesn't matter that you specifically broke it out. So you collected the money. In that case, what happened is the state came in and said, you collected the money, you're on the hook for it.
That's not the situation.
No. As a business owner, pretty much I would recommend that you just quote the sales tax in the price. When you give the customer that price, in the beginning, you quote it in there. And then if they say, well, okay, why is these cents are here? These cents are here because it is sales tax. You have to, as a business owner, educate your clients on how to treat you, right?
So the sales tax does get quoted, and it happens more than you probably think it does. And I'm not an anomaly out there.
Right.
It gets quoted every time we send a quote out. Sales tax is quoted on the orders. There are large companies in the state of New Jersey that are doing it, that are refusing to pay the sales tax. They're refusing to submit ST forms. They just claim it is not sales taxable and pay every dime except for the sales tax. And again, they have been, over the decades this has occurred in my business, reported to the state of New Jersey. Companies are still in business.
Do they cite it as a business input? And
They don't cite anything.
They don't.
pay it.
interesting.
That's what they say.
Well, I do have contact information in here for my unit. No, if it's been reported several times and nothing has been done, please reach out to me, and I will make sure it gets into the right hands, because it sounds like you're talking about a lot of money, and not just customers refusing to pay sales tax, but big businesses that are maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. As a creative work, do they just not like sales tax? Are they anti-government? If you rolled the sales tax into the price and didn't even have sales tax on there and then just paid it yourself, would that be something they wouldn't
I
know?
don't play those games. Here's what-
Okay, that's right not to, but
No, and that's Ed. A business doing the right thing like you guys
Right.
shouldn't get in trouble for somebody else not doing the right thing. So,
Yeah.
so I would encourage you to, yeah.
I had no problem knocking down my doors.
No, that's an interesting. I haven't heard about that as much, so thank you for bringing that up.
I'm sorry that hasn't been, you haven't gotten attention, but please reach
Oh,
out.
I've gotten the attention.
Just not the right kind.
Okay. Any other we're done. I'm being told we're done with our questions. So thank you very much. We are about out of time. And thank you very much to Mike and to Rich and to Mary. This was a great discussion. Thank you to the.
Thank you all.
Thank